Nigeria. They speak
Mm-hmm.
Hausa. That's how they speak. And those guys had those knives. They called it daggers. Those long swords. And I was caught. And I was caught on the ground that I was an armed robber. Well, how could I disprove myself when I don't live in that city? Nobody knows me around there, and I was caught in somebody else's house, sleeping. So that night, I went closer to my grave that night and came back. 'Cause I
Closer
was
to your
beat.
grave.
Yeah, I was beaten. I still have the scars all over my body. In Nigeria, they don't take um, armed robbers to court. You are murdered. They burn you with tires. And the next morning, they only find your body in the streets that have been burned overnight. So I was beaten by the entire city. People came out. This guy's a thief. He's the first suspect we ever got in this city. They keep harassing us. They keep
And
terrorizing.
nobody could understand you. They
How
all
could
speaking
even
Hausa.
yeah? And secondly, my English at the time was not refined, so I was speaking like the Liberian with the foreign accent, and they're like, "That's what the armed robbers do. They have all kinds of tongues. They confuse people." The guy's not a refugee. He's not even from Liberia. The refugees live in Ogun State. This is Lagos State. What brought him here? He should be over there. So the point was he was going to be killed by 5 o'clock in the morning. Normally that's what happened. You get killed in the morning before they leave to go back home, and the government will pick up your body from the street. But I got saved from that by the grace of God, and
How
just
did you get safe?
well, I was being surrounded by the whole community in the center of town. There's a town square in that area. It's called Ikorodu. I was standing right in the middle there, and every neighbor came out. What happened? They said we have an Arab. Praise God for the first time. We have a suspect that's going to lead us to arresting most of the people that have been terrorizing our community. I have no clue what they were talking about. So beating, I was lost few things. All my clothes were gone. Everything was gone. Severe the beating. While standing in there, it was around 4:30 in the morning. A girl came from church. I think she went to a night vigil or something. And on her way back, she stopped. There was this crowd of people surrounding this young man, and she found her way through the crowd and just came out and said, "Hello, my name is this. I'm from church this morning, and I saw that they arrested you. You're an armed robber. Are you an armed robber for real?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Well, the reason why I asked you is that this problem you have this morning is a big problem. You could be dead in the next 1 hour. The God that you believe in will save you from here this morning." These guys,
That's what she told you.
yeah. She said, "My brother went to Liberia as a peacekeeper back in the 90s, and he's back home, but I left him in the barracks. I will reach to the house. If I see him early, I'll let him know as a military person. He might be able to come with the how do you call it, military police. Yeah, that's the military police. They'll be able to come and put this thing on us because they are the only people who can come here now." So I said, "Okay." So she left. I never saw her again. So I was beating, 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 almost getting to like 5 o'clock. That was getting closer to the death time.
Death time. They take you to the
They
gallows.
getting closer to the time, and we heard a car drove into the crowd. It was an open pickup, military pickup. Military police show up, and they fire into the air several times, and the crowds kind of cool down. And the commander, came to me straight with his pistol in the air, and he said, "If you lied to me, I will kill you myself. This people will not. I will kill you. There's no robbery case go to court in Nigeria. You die on the spot. So tell me the truth. Are you an armed robber?" And I said, "No, I'm not an armed robber." He said, "Well, so where you from? Who are you?" I said, "I'm a Liberian." He said, "Liberian? None of you live around here. There's a refugee camp the government have given you people. That's where you should be,
In
not here.
Ogun State.
In Ogun State, not here." And I said, "Sir, I can explain." And I explained to him. He said, "If I find out that you are not from Liberia, you'll be dead." And I said, "Sure." So he said, "Call me the corporal from the car." There was a guy that was on the patrol team that night who's been to Liberia, chef here. So the guy was called upon.
Email with Echo Mark before.
Yeah. So he came and he started speaking Liberian English, and I responded. He said he was in Buchanan. So he asked me, what road do you take to Buchanan? So, well, maybe you go through Habel or you go through 15 Gate or whatever. So we talk about that, general things. And he looked at the bus and he said, "This guy's from Liberia. He wasn't a Liberian. He won't know some of the things that we're talking about. He's a Liberian. I'm not saying he's not an armed robber. I'm saying he's a Liberian."
He's a Liberian.
So the guy said, the commander said, "Well, since this is the case, we have identified who he is through our officer. We're going to take all of you to the police station." So we're taking the police station. Then the police themselves were sleeping because they are not allowed to be out. So I was thrown into jail automatically without any statement written whatsoever, thrown into the jail. And then I met few friends in the jailhouse, and stayed there for 3 months before I was released.
3 months.
3 months in jail. And nobody in the refugee camp knew I was in jail because nobody, hey, you never came with anybody. Nobody know who you are, so I stayed there for that long. But while in the prison, a lot of interesting things happen in there. Met some guys that every evening each of us, like you and I are doing right now, we come forward and share the story with the rest of the inmates. What brought you to prison? What did you do? What brought you here? So I went out and shared my story, and the other guy looked at me and said, Eric, he said, we are not from Liberia, we are Nigerians. In our own country, you can see we're in prison. So welcome to our world. And we talk about that, we laugh. And then 3 months later, my case was still not written. I was sent in there without a written statement. What I heard was that the owner of that building in which I was caught lives in London and will be back to the country maybe in 2 months or 3 months, and she is interested in that case. And the police cannot release me.
In case of the person who was found in her house.
Yeah. And she lives in London. She lives in Nigeria.
Okay.
So until she comes back to the country, I got to remain in jail.
You got to remain in jail.
Yeah. Okay? Because that's her house. Then number two, if the police release me on bail, it will be misunderstood or interpreted as the police is working with
the aiding and abetting you.
Yeah, the robbers.
Uh-huh.
These guys that terrorized us, they arrested one of them.
As a robber.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
they arrested one of them, and he was released without even the community knowing anything about it. So, Eric, this is a complex situation. We cannot release you. You guys just be in there. And the lady eventually came from London. She met me, and she said, what I want you to do is to tell me your alias, those that you work with, your collaborators, those that support you, those that, your connivers, so that we can punish everybody together, not just you alone. And I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, well, you're going to get rotten in jail if you don't know what I'm talking about. I spent almost 2-3 million pounds for my estates around. And every day in robbers, you guys have been terrorizing us, so you got to say something. And I said, I don't know what to say. So eventually, the case was asked to be sent to court, to the robbery court, to be sentenced finally to jail, life in prison or whatever it was, because that's what the law says. So the night before I went to jail, I went to the court. My guys in the prison came around me and said, hey, look, Eric, I want to tell you one thing. Everybody in this world is going to die one day, in one form or the other. Death is death. All right? That's it. The person who's going to judge you tomorrow will be one day will die. Maybe you would just go ahead a little bit, and in a little while, they will follow suit. So take that courage as you go. Yeah, so that's the way I got to the court. And
how did you feel at the time?
Well,
no communication, nobody to talk to, no relative.
Well, it was tough because I told the police I'm from the refugee camp, and they're like, we don't have phones here. That was before the era of cell phones. Mm-hmm. We don't have phone here to call anybody in the camp, and the camp doesn't have phone. And you come 2 hours away, which requires gasoline in the car if you ever go over to go and check. If you are not important to your own people that you live with, for them to come and find you, then it just shows to us that maybe what the people are accusing of is true. Maybe you are that useless and worthless to your own people. Because nobody cares. So we went through that, and the police could not go. They couldn't make the calls. They couldn't contact the UNHCR in Lagos because they said they have no men to send out there to go check on anything, and they needed somebody to pay for the gasoline, or at least for the men who were going to go make the investigation. I didn't have money, so guess what? You stay in jail. So that was what happened. So I got to the court. The lady, the judge, she asked me, are you guilty? And I said, not guilty. Thinking the Liberian way, because in Liberia you are innocent till proven guilty. Over there is that you are guilty till proven innocent. So I didn't know that. So when I said that, she said, what do you mean? You are guilty of the crime until you prove yourself innocent. I said, okay, if you say that, that's the way you say. She said, why? That's the law here. You are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. I said, okay. She said, so who are you? I said, I'm a Liberian. So are you sure you're a Liberian? Yeah. What are you doing here? So I explained the situation to her, exactly what happened. And then she said, okay, if I find out you're not from Liberia, that'll be a problem. I said, okay, no problem. So she said, well, take him back to the jailhouse. I will take my own time, spend my own money to investigate his identity first, to establish his identity, because we don't know who he is. I went back to jail, more days in the prison. So eventually, I think it was 3 weeks later, I was called back to the court, and I went there, took the stand. She said, well, I was able to pay some people transportation to go to the refugee camp to find out whether there was any Eric Wowoh in the camp. And the information I got is yes, there's one Eric Wowoh, but they don't know where he is. They don't know whether you are the Eric Wowoh or you're not the Eric Wowoh. They don't know. But they have not seen that Eric Wowoh for a while. So we assume you are the one. And the UN confirmed from their records that they have one refugee with this name. Based upon that, I'm going to release you based upon recognition. We didn't know who you were. So now that you have established that fact, convinced this code that you are a refugee from Liberia, we release you because you are a government's child. The government brought you here, or the government gave you the authority to live here in Nigeria as a refugee. So we release you based on that. But secondly, I don't want you hanging around the streets like this. I want you to go to the camp and find a school that you need to go to, and you come back to see me. I will help you pay your tuition.
The judge told you that.
Yeah, it got to be a cheap school, a very cheap school, because I don't have a lot of money. And she said, the reason why I want to do this for you is because I have two kids who live outside of this country. They live in England, and one is in the States. Those children are in a foreign country just like you are in a foreign country today. And I don't know if they ever ran into a trouble like this over there where I'm not. I don't know how they will survive it.
The mother.
The mother. So in this situation, I look at you as just like one of my kids outside of this country. And I see myself in this situation where my child is facing a criminal case like this, a robbery case, and no one to speak for him. So based on that, I'm going to help you. So that was how I went to school for 3 years. She paid the school fees. I was collecting yam and gari and oil from her every semester. I come to the city, she would give it to me, and I would take it to school. I stay in contact with her to today. So we live in a camp all those years. And after my school, one day in that prison, I met a guy who beat up his wife. And he told me, he said, I'm not a criminal. I just beat up my wife because her mouth is too much. You know, she doesn't respect me. So after prison, come and see me when you are released, and I will try to help you out. That guy's connection led to another connection with a guy at the church in Lagos. I went to see a Liberian pastor, and he wasn't around. We met somebody else. And this guy was standing around looking at books, and I said, hey, I'm from Oru Camp, blah, blah. He said, well, refugees in Nigeria? And I said, yeah. He said, I never heard about that before. I said, well, ask your people, they'll tell you. So he asked his friend, oh, yeah, we heard that refugees here in Ogun State. So he said, okay, so what's the problem? I said, well, I'm in school. I came to see Reverend Jackson from Liberia, who's one of your pastors here, but he's too busy, he can't talk to me. So he said, oh, myself, I'm visiting this church for the first time, and I don't come here. But what's the problem? So I explained to him. He said, well, let's meet tomorrow for lunch. He gave me the address to where to meet him in the city. Therefore, I couldn't go back to the camp. I had to sleep in Lagos under the bridges to meet with him the following day. I went for the meeting. We talked. What do you guys do in the refugee camp? Nothing. Nothing? Yeah. And you've been there for 10 years? Nothing. There's nothing really going on. So eventually, fast forward the story, a year later, one day he called me up and he said, I want to visit the camp where you live. We've been friends for a year now. I don't know where you live. I want to see the place. So we drove. Before we drove into his car, he said, you know, this is a company car. Why must I trust you with my car? We are going to the refugee camp. I've never been there before. I don't even know who you are. And I'm going to a refugee camp where I believe that a lot of traumatized people that have different issues, not in different grief and all of that. So I said, well, just trust me, believe me, and let's do this. So we went to the camp, visited the refugee camp, and he was touched. So Lunians fighting Liberians, Liberians fighting among themselves. We have people from Somalia, Ethiopia. The camp was mixed. You know, there's confusion back and forth. So he said, how do you live here for 10 years? What kind of future are you guys creating in this kind of environment for Liberia? I said, I don't know, sir. This is the way it is. I didn't choose this. I didn't design this. I never declared a war in Liberia. I had no part to do. I have no idea what's going on. But now my generation has to pay for this. We are the correction fluid for this. And he said, what do you want to do for yourself? I said, well, I want to learn computer. I don't know anything about computer. So he said, okay, computer. He worked for Citibank at the time in Lagos. So he said, well, I'm going for vacation. When I come back, we'll talk about that. Came back from England the following year, brought a computer, Windows XP, multimedia system in the back of his car with a Tiger generator and some smaller things for the church I was going to. And he said to me, as we discussed, this is your computer. I want you to find somebody in the refugee camp who knows about computer, at least the basics, to put you through. But there are self-tutorial programs on the computer that I believe will be able to help you. You just need a guide to introduce you to the system. So I called a guy who is in the country right now. His name is Mr. Tamba Elua, a guy from Lofa as well. He was in a computer school at the time in the refugee camp, and at the same time lecturing as a computer lecturer, a Liberian. So I said, my man, this is my friend. He said, I should take this computer. Well, can you teach me? And he said yes. And the guy said, well, I'll pay you $5,000. Naira, to train Eric for 3 months and leave him alone. So that guy was my first professor. The computer was placed in my room on the refugee camp, and the school, the project that I run today, which is the Change Agent Network, started that day. So the computer was placed there. I learned on the computer. After I learned, one night I went to bed and I started to think about everything else we've been through as refugees. Now I have a generator. I'm the only man with electricity on at night, with one computer in my room, in a refugee camp, in the midst of 10,000 people. What is the purpose of that? Do I truly deserve this thing? Can I protect it? And do I have the right to protect it? I didn't create this thing. This is a gift. And all I can do with a gift is to give it back. So I need to start a school here. What I have learned from this guy, I need to start teaching others. So I called the guy who designed the brochure, and I sent it out to the refugee. And I said, there's a computer school in the refugee camp. Whoever wants to go to school, come to my room. So that day, the computer school started. That first week, we had 100 students show up from different nations. And the teaching was simple. You walk into the room, like what you're doing right now, sitting behind the computer. You come in, we tell you this is the CPU, this is the monitor, this is the keyboard and the mouse, and this is the mouse bar. Copy? Yeah. Hold the mouse, take it right, bring it left, go top, come down. You got it? Yeah. And this is the cursor, right? Good. Class over. Next person. That's the way we started at school. In the midst of that, Jared Nimbick Pierre today, who is the press secretary,
Press secretary, the
was
president.
was a refugee at the time in the camp as well with us.